It was a cold, rainy afternoon in the small town of Brookfield. Officer Mark Reynolds had just finished a long shift patrolling the city. As he drove down an old, rarely used road near the edge of the woods, he slowed down, his headlights catching something small and moving in the downpour. At first, he thought it was a bundle of trash, but then it moved. Mark quickly pulled over and stepped out into the rain, his boots splashing into the muddy roadside. He squinted through the downpour and saw a tiny, trembling puppy, soaked to the bone, barely able to stand, whimpering under a rusted road sign. "Hey there, little one," Mark said softly, kneeling down. The puppy looked up with terrified eyes and took a shaky step backward, its tiny body shaking uncontrollably. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you," Mark added, slowly taking off his jacket and wrapping the puppy in it. The pup didn't resist. It seemed to sense something in Mark. Maybe his calm voice, maybe the warmth of his coat. Whatever it was, the puppy let itself be lifted into his arms. Mark got back into his patrol car, the wet puppy nestled against his chest. "Looks like you're riding with me tonight," he whispered. Back at his small apartment, Mark dried off the little pup, now wrapped in a soft towel. The pup was still shivering, but after a bowl of warm milk and a small piece of chicken, it began to wag its tiny tail. Mark chuckled. "You like that, huh? You've got a good appetite for someone so small." He took a deep breath and looked at the puppy. "I don't know where you came from, but maybe you were meant to find me." He named her Rainy, a name that seemed fitting for the little soul who had come into his life on a stormy afternoon. Days turned into weeks. Rainy grew stronger, healthier, and happier. Mark started coming home from work excited just to see her. Her tail would wag furiously every time she heard his keys at the door. "Miss me, girl?" he'd ask, and she'd leap into his arms like he'd been gone for days. Rainy became the talk of the department. The guys at the precinct couldn't believe how quickly she learned commands, how she seemed to understand emotions. "Dude, she's like a four-legged therapist," joked Officer Jenny one afternoon. "Last week, she just came and sat with me after that awful case. Didn't say a word, just sat there. I didn't even know I needed that." Mark smiled. "She's got a sixth sense." One morning, Mark woke up to Rainy pawing at his chest, whining. He sat up, disoriented. "What is it, girl?" He stood and instantly smelled it. Gas. His neighbor's apartment had a leak. Rainy had smelled it before any human could. Mark called emergency services immediately. Thanks to Rainy's instinct, the entire building was evacuated before the leak could turn into something far worse. "Your dog just saved 40 people, one firefighter told him, shaking his head in amazement. Rainy wagged her tail, tongue out like it was just another Tuesday. Later that month, Mark took Rainy to a local nursing home as part of a community outreach program. She trotted from one room to another, offering her soft fur to trembling hands, bringing light into rooms filled with silence. "Can she stay a little longer?" An elderly man named Mr. Donovan asked, holding her paw gently. "She reminds me of a dog I had during the war." Rainy curled up next to him without a command. "I think she chooses where she's needed most," Mark said quietly. One day, Mark came home with his arm in a sling, an injury from chasing down a suspect. He grimaced as he sat on the couch. Rainy hopped up next to him, resting her head gently on his leg. "You know," Mark said, wincing, "I don't say it enough, but I don't know where I'd be without you." She looked up, licking his hand carefully, as if she understood every word. And then came the house fire. Mark had been dispatched to a tense situation, a house fire in a rural area, with reports of someone still inside. As he pulled up to the scene, flames were already licking the windows, smoke curling into the sky. A frantic woman screamed, "My son! He's still inside!" Before Mark could even think, Rainey, who had ridden with him that day, leapt out of the car and dashed toward the house. "Rainey! No!" Mark shouted. But she didn't stop. She vanished into the smoke. Mark rushed in after her, heat and smoke hitting him like a wall. He followed the faint sound of barking until he reached the back bedroom. There, coughing and barely conscious, was a little boy, and beside him, Rainey was barking non-stop. Mark scooped the boy into his arms and called out, "Rainey, let's go!" Rainey didn't hesitate. She followed Mark as they ran out, just before the roof of the house gave way behind them. The crowd outside erupted in cheers. The boy's mother hugged her son tightly, crying into his shoulder. And then she turned to Rainey, kneeling down. "You saved my baby," she whispered. "You're a miracle." Mark knelt beside her, stroking Rainey's fur. "She saved me first," he said. From that day forward, Rainey became more than a rescue pup. She was a local hero. The department even gave her a tiny badge with her name on it, K9 Honorary Officer. Rainey. Children would come to the station just to meet her. She'd sit proudly by Mark's side, tail wagging, as he gave talks about courage and kindness. One day, during a school visit, a little girl raised her hand and asked, "Officer Reynolds, do you think Rainey was sent to you for a reason?" Mark looked down at Rainey, who was gently licking a child's hand. He smiled. "I don't think it," he said. "I know it." Years later, after many adventures and rescues, Rainey grew older. Her steps became slower, her naps longer. But her eyes, those wise, soulful eyes, never lost their spark. On her final day, Mark held her in his arms by the fireplace, whispering stories of their journey together. "Thank you," he said, tears streaming down his cheeks. "You were the best partner I ever had." Rainey gave a soft wag of her tail and rested her head on his lap. And as the fire crackled and the rain tapped gently against the windows, just like the day they met, she drifted off, wrapped in the same jacket he'd once found her in. To this day, a plaque in the Brookfield Police Department reads, "In memory of Rainey, found in the rain, became the sunshine." And every time a new officer walks past it, they hear the story of the little pup who cried in the rain and became a hero.